Jake Collins squinted through the dusty window of the armored vehicle, watching the barren landscape glide slowly by. The midday sun beat mercilessly on the dry terrain, casting a harsh glare on sand dunes that stretched endlessly towards the horizon. Jake felt a dull throb of anticipation deep in his chest, a heartbeat growing louder with every mile, every minute closer to home. 2 weeks, he murmured, leaning back and taking off his helmet to run a tired hand through his short-cropped hair. His dusty combat uniform was stiff with sweat, grime, and memories. After 18 months deployed overseas, the promise of home loomed like a mirage he hardly dared trust. From the front seat, Private Ramirez glanced back, grinning broadly. "Counting down the days, Sergeant?" Jake nodded, allowing himself a rare smile. "Every minute of it, Ramirez." The young private laughed, shaking his head. "Man, if it were me, I'd be dreaming of cheeseburgers and cold beers right now." Jake chuckled softly. "Trust me, I am. But more than anything, I'm looking forward to some peace and quiet." The radio crackled to life, interrupting their brief moment of levity. "Vehicle 4, check your coordinates and maintain formation. ETA to the base. 45 minutes. Jake keyed the mic, replying crisply. "Roger that. Maintaining position." He leaned forward again, staring out across the expansive wilderness that had become too familiar. The harsh terrain, the blistering heat, and the constant hum of danger had been his companions for too long. Memories of patrols, firefights, and endless nights awake weighed heavily on his mind. Yet now only days stood between him and a town he'd called home his entire life. Millfield, a quiet community nestled in the lush greenery of rural America, miles away from the harsh reality he'd faced. Jake's thoughts drifted toward images of home, mornings by the lake, long drives through familiar streets, and quiet evenings spent on the front porch with his mother's homemade apple pie. It felt surreal now, the contrast between the chaotic world he'd inhabited and the peaceful town awaiting him. "Your family know exactly when you're coming home, Sergeant?" Ramirez asked quietly, sensing Jake's introspection. Jake shook his head. I've decided to surprise them. They still think I have 3 months left." Ramirez laughed softly. "Man, that's going to be some homecoming." Jake smiled faintly. "Hope so." As they moved forward, Jake's mind wandered back to the day he enlisted. He'd been young, idealistic, eager to serve. He remembered standing in the kitchen with his parents, watching his mother's worried eyes and his father's proud yet silent nod of approval. The day he'd left, his sister Anna had cried softly into his shoulder, clutching his jacket tightly as if it could somehow hold him there longer. Now, years later, he wondered how they'd changed, how much life had moved on without him. An hour later, Jake's vehicle rolled into base, its rugged exterior caked with dust and grime. The familiar sights of military tents, sandbags, and armed soldiers patrolling gave Jake both a sense of comfort and an anxious longing for departure. After securing his gear and briefly reporting to command, Jake stepped into the mess hall, craving coffee despite the scorching heat outside. Inside, the chatter was loud and animated, soldiers sharing jokes, swapping stories, some discussing plans for their own returns home. Jake grabbed a metal cup of coffee and sat down heavily beside his longtime friend, Sergeant Mark Everett, who nodded in greeting. "Counting the hours yet?" Everett teased, reading Jake's face effortlessly. "Every second," Jake replied honestly, sipping his bitter coffee. He grimaced slightly, shaking his head. "Home feels like a lifetime away." Everett leaned back, crossing his arms thoughtfully. "You think you'll adjust quickly?" Jake paused, contemplating the question seriously. "Honestly, I don't know. I've gotten used to living life minute by minute, always vigilant, never letting my guard down. Home means letting go, and that feels strange." Everett smiled knowingly. "It's an adjustment, but you'll find your rhythm again. Took me months after my first deployment. Sometimes I still catch myself scanning the crowds, watching rooftops." He sighed, then grinned wryly. "But man, the peace you'll feel when you step into your house for the first time, that's something else." Jake smiled slightly, hope fluttering softly in his chest. "I'm counting on it." The next morning, Jake stood at attention, addressing a small group of fresh-faced soldiers. They watched him intently, their eyes wide with a blend of awe and nervous anticipation. Jake recognized the expression, He'd worn it himself years ago. Listen carefully, Jake began, pacing slowly. This isn't training anymore. The decisions you make here matter. Your lives and the lives of your fellow soldiers depend on your judgment. The R, the sunlight gently filtered through the airplane window, nudging Jake awake from an uneasy sleep. Rubbing his tired eyes, he glanced at the digital clock on his watch. Only 3 hours remained until landing. Anticipation surged through him, tingling from his chest to his fingertips. Yet beneath the excitement lay an undercurrent of anxiety. He'd planned his return as a surprise, something special to reward his family's long, patient wait. But what if things didn't go as planned? Shaking off the thought, Jake straightened in his seat, peering out the small airplane window. Below, the sprawling landscape was green and lush, vastly different from the desert he'd left behind. The gentle curves of winding rivers and patchwork fields comforted him, pulling his heart closer to Millfield. The seatbelt sign blinked softly overhead, drawing Jake back into the present. He tightened the strap across his waist, leaning back again, breathing deeply. Soon, he thought, he'd see his hometown streets again, the familiar sight of Main Street's lined shops, the tranquil flow of cars, the townsfolk greeting each other warmly. Millfield wasn't just his hometown. It represented everything he'd fought to protect: peace, family, normalcy. Jake reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, faded photograph. The edges were worn, creased from countless examinations. It showed his family, his mother, Helen, with her gentle smile and eyes full of warmth. His father, Joseph, sturdy and quiet, arm protectively around Helen's shoulders, and his younger sister, Anna, grinning brightly, always the vibrant heart of their small family. He traced the familiar faces, feeling a swell of longing. How much had changed? How much had he missed? "Going home?" asked a soft voice from beside him. Turning, Jake met the curious, friendly eyes of an elderly woman seated next to him. Her silver hair framed a gentle, weathered face. "Yes, ma'am," Jake answered politely, tucking the photo away. "I thought so," she smiled knowingly. "You've got that look about you. Excitement. Nerves. How long have you been away?" 18 months this deployment, ma'am," Jake replied, voice gentle yet heavy with the weight of those months. Her eyes softened. "That's a long time. They must miss you terribly." Jake nodded slowly. "They don't know I'm coming back yet. I wanted to surprise them." She chuckled softly, eyes sparkling. "Surprises like that are priceless. Treasure the moment. You've earned it." Jake smiled, appreciating her warmth. "Thank you. I certainly hope so." As the plane began its slow descent toward the runway, Jake's heartbeat quickened. Millfield was finally within reach. Stepping out of the airport into the cool breeze felt surreal. Jake took a deep breath, savoring the fresh air, so unlike the harsh, dry atmosphere he'd left behind. After claiming his duffel, he scanned the parking lot, searching for his ride. His eyes caught sight of a battered pickup truck pulling up slowly. Michael's truck, unmistakably familiar with its chipped blue paint and distinctive dented fender. Michael stepped out of the truck, waving enthusiastically. Jake felt relief and joy bloom simultaneously, smiling widely as his childhood best friend strode toward him. Michael's grin was broad, infectious, his dark eyes gleaming. "Welcome back, Sergeant Collins," Michael called dramatically, pulling Jake into a firm embrace. "Missed you, buddy." Jake hugged him tightly, relief flooding him at the familiar comfort. "Missed you too, Mike." Michael stepped back, surveying Jake closely. "You look good, considering." "Glad you made it home safe." Jake exhaled deeply, a weight lifting from his shoulders. "Feels good to be home. Trust me." Michael hoisted Jake's bag into the truck, nodding toward town. "Ready to keep this surprise going?" Jake laughed softly, climbing into the passenger seat. "Let's do it." As they drove away, Michael began enthusiastically discussing the details of their surprise plan. "So I've been thinking we time your big reveal at Saturday's town festival. Everyone's always there, and your folks and Anna definitely won't miss it." Jake grinned at the familiar excitement in Michael's voice. "Festival, huh? Still as big as ever?" "Bigger," Michael laughed, eyes sparkling. Games, music, barbecue. The whole town turns up. Your parents volunteered at the bake sale booth this year, too. Perfect place to surprise them. Jake nodded, visualizing the moment. His chest tightened with anticipation. I can't wait to see their faces. Michael glanced over, smirking. They've been talking about you nonstop. Anna, especially. She's been making all these plans for when you get back. Says she wants to take you hiking and camping, make up for lost time. Jake chuckled warmly. Sounds exactly like her. Arriving at Michael's modest home on the outskirts of Millfield, Jake felt a comforting familiarity envelop him. Michael's small house had always been like a second home. The soft hum of early morning traffic murmured outside Michael's house, gently pulling Jake from sleep. He blinked slowly, the room bathed in soft gray morning light. For a brief, disoriented moment, he wondered if he were back overseas, waiting for the morning drills or distant echoes of conflict. Then he heard the familiar sounds of birds and the rhythmic rustling of leaves, and relief flooded his chest. Jake stretched, muscles aching slightly from yesterday's travel and lingering tension. Today was Friday, the last full day before the festival and his planned reunion. His stomach knotted gently in anticipation. He'd faced countless dangers overseas, yet this emotional moment, reuniting with family, fitting back into a life he'd left behind, seemed more daunting than anything he'd faced on foreign soil. He sat up slowly, feet touching the cold wooden floor. His eyes fell upon the small dresser where Michael had left fresh towels and clothes. The thoughtful gesture warmed him, highlighting how profoundly he'd missed the everyday comforts of home. Downstairs, Michael was already in the kitchen, pouring steaming coffee into 2 cups. He grinned broadly when Jake entered, raising 1 cup in greeting. Morning, sleepyhead, Michael teased. Thought you soldiers were used to getting up at dawn. Jake laughed lightly, accepting the coffee gratefully. Figured I deserved to sleep in just once. Michael nodded approvingly. Fair enough. Big day tomorrow. Jake sipped slowly, savoring the rich, familiar taste. He leaned against the kitchen counter, watching the sunrise spill gently across the yard. The sight was tranquil, a stark contrast to his usual mornings. Michael watched him thoughtfully, sensing Jake's quiet reflection. Want to head out later? Walk through town? It'll give you some breathing room before tomorrow's big surprise. Jake considered it, nodding appreciatively. That'd be good. Might help settle the nerves. Michael grinned warmly, slapping Jake's shoulder. It'll be perfect. Plus, everyone's too busy prepping for the festival to notice us. Good chance to scout things out. After breakfast, Jake stepped outside, breathing deeply. The fresh morning air filled his lungs, crisp and invigorating. Millfield lay ahead, inviting and familiar, sunlight reflecting warmly off roofs and quiet roads. Walking alongside Michael into town, Jake felt an uncanny sense of déjà vu. Every landmark stirred vivid memories: childhood bike rides, fishing by the lake, quiet afternoons beneath ancient oak trees. Main Street bustled quietly, filled with friendly greetings and laughter as townsfolk prepared decorations. Colorful banners fluttered between lampposts, proudly declaring Millfield's annual town festival. Jake smiled softly, appreciating the unchanging rhythm of life here. It felt comforting, grounding him. Yet despite the familiar setting, Jake felt subtly disconnected, as if he were observing everything through glass, close yet separate. He shook off the thought, determined to reintegrate, to find his place again among these familiar faces. Feels strange being back, huh? Michael asked quietly, reading Jake's expression easily. Jake nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, like everything stayed the same except me. It's good, but strange. Michael nudged him gently, grinning. Give yourself time. You've earned it. Later, they walked past Jake's childhood home again, careful to stay hidden among the trees. Jake paused, watching his mother, Helen, lovingly water the garden, humming softly to herself. He felt a surge of warmth, mixed with a longing so sharp it was almost painful. Michael placed a reassuring hand on Jake's shoulder, sensing his friend's quiet emotional turmoil. She looks happy, Jake whispered softly, voice thick with emotion. Michael nodded gently. She'll be even happier tomorrow. Jake took a deep breath, heart pounding. I hope so. They moved quietly away, heading toward the lake at the edge of town. The waters were calm, gently rippling beneath the sunlight, mirroring the blue sky above. Jake sat on the grassy bank, closing his eyes briefly. The lake held countless memories: fishing trips with his father, summer swims with Anna, campfires with friends under the stars. Michael sat beside him, tossing a small stone into the water. Feels like yesterday we were kids, planning our futures out here. Jake smiled faintly, lost in memories. Seems like another lifetime. Still glad you enlisted? Michael asked softly, tone genuinely curious. Jake paused, considering carefully. Yeah, despite everything, I think I made a difference. But being home now, I'm realizing how much I missed. Michael nodded understandingly. Millfield missed you too. Things never felt quite right with you gone. They sat quietly, comfortable in their friendship's silence, watching the gentle ripples on the lake, each lost in their own thoughts. Later that evening, back at Michael's house, Jake unpacked his. Jake stood frozen for a brief moment, eyes locked with his mother's astonished, tear-filled gaze from the edge of the stage. His heart hammered against his ribs, emotions swirling fiercely within his chest. Around him, applause and cheers echoed loudly through the festive air. Yet everything beyond his family faded into a muted hum. A gentle nudge from Michael broke his trance, bringing him back to the moment. It's all yours, Jake, Michael whispered encouragingly, smiling warmly. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Jake stepped forward, climbing the short stairs onto the stage. Every step felt heavy, charged with anticipation and a lifetime of waiting. He paused momentarily, his uniform crisp, metals gleaming softly in the afternoon sunlight. His throat tightened as he looked at his family again, seeing clearly their disbelief melting slowly into joy. The announcer handed Jake the microphone gently, stepping back respectfully. Jake swallowed thickly, emotions rising sharply. He glanced at Michael, receiving a reassuring nod. He lifted the mic carefully, voice steady despite his nerves. Hello, Millfield, he began softly, a shy, heartfelt smile lighting his features. The crowd immediately quieted, hanging on his every word. It's good to finally be home. The audience erupted once more, applause surging warmly. Jake felt his cheeks flush, overwhelmed by their genuine affection. His eyes found his family again, his mother openly weeping, covering her mouth in shocked delight, his father holding her close, his eyes misted yet steady, pride evident in every subtle nod. Anna stood utterly frozen, hands trembling at her sides, eyes wide with disbelief and joy. I kept this homecoming a secret, not to make things difficult, Jake continued sincerely, eyes glistening gently, but because I wanted to give back some of the joy and love you've all given me throughout my deployment. Millfield isn't just my hometown, it's my anchor. Every day, even halfway around the world, I carried each of you in my heart. Today, finally, my heart's come home too. Cheers surged louder, emotional and powerful. Jake smiled warmly, eyes focused gently on his family. Mom, Dad, Anna, I missed you all more than words can say. Thank you for waiting for me. Lowering the microphone carefully, Jake stepped off the stage, barely aware of the applause and heartfelt whispers around him. All his focus narrowed on his family, standing just a few steps away. His mother broke first, rushing forward, arms extended, tears streaming freely down her face. Jake! She cried out, voice cracking with relief and joy. Jake opened his arms, embracing her tightly, feeling her trembling against his chest. Her soft sobs melted away his last lingering anxieties, anchoring him fully into this precious moment. Mom, he whispered softly, voice thick with emotion. I'm home. His father stepped forward quietly, placing a firm, reassuring hand on Jake's shoulder. Jake looked up into his father's eyes, steady, calm, pride and quiet love evident. Welcome home, son, Joseph said simply, his voice deep with profound gratitude and relief. Thanks, Dad, Jake replied warmly, the weight of their shared understanding flowing between them silently, strengthening the bond they'd always shared. Anna, unable to hold back any longer, rushed into Jake's arms, gripping him fiercely. Her tears soaked quickly into his uniform, but Jake barely noticed, holding her tightly. I missed you so much, Jake, Anna sobbed softly. I thought this day would never come. Jake squeezed gently, comforting her as he always had. I'm here, Anna. I'm finally back. The crowd slowly dispersed, giving the family a respectful moment of privacy. Michael watched fondly, deeply moved, knowing how long Jake had awaited this moment. Quietly, he stepped back, proud yet humble in his supporting role. Minutes later, Jake sat beside his family beneath a shady oak tree away from the festival crowd, savoring the tranquility. His mother clutched his hand tightly, unwilling to let go, her face radiant despite tearful eyes. Joseph sat quietly beside them, his calm presence deeply reassuring. Anna, still emotional but now smiling brightly, spoke first. Jake, you really surprised us. How did you manage it? Jake chuckled softly, grateful for her vibrant energy. I had help from Michael. He's kept my secret safe, even from you. Anna glanced over her shoulder toward Michael, who stood at a respectful distance, chatting quietly with townsfolk. He's the best, she said warmly. I should have guessed he was up to something. Helen squeezed Jake's hand gently. We're just so thankful you're back safe. It's been too long, sweetheart. Jake exhaled slowly, smiling gently at his mother. I know, but every day remembering this, remembering you, kept me going. I needed to do this right. You deserve this reunion. Joseph nodded slowly, voice steady, yet heavy with quiet emotion. We're proud of you, Jake. Always.